Welcome everyone, and happy Halloween. I wanted to do something special for this Halloween. I didn't know quite what to do, so I'm putting together my first video essay. And what else would I do it on other than horror games? This is going to be a list of my top 10 scares in video games from all my experience of playing damn near every horror game on the market. That's probably an overstatement, but still. I'm calling this a top 10 scare list. It's not necessarily jump scares, a lot of them are, but just kind of condensed moments that lead up to a scary experience. And I just want to make it clear, I'm not trying to make an objective list here. These are my subjective experience. The top 10 moments that really stand out to me, and I'll explain why, but I, of course, don't expect everyone to have the same experience. Without further ado, let's see what I cooked up. Alright, to start things off, number 10 here, I am giving it to Resident Evil 7, specifically the demo, actually. So I know the original game had some good scares in it and everything, but I have stronger memories when the demo came out. So the demo just kind of dropped, and it was really kind of shrouded in mystery. So you walk around part of the Baker's estate, and you're just kind of aimlessly wandering, kind of solving puzzles. You find some of the tapes that actually show up in the real game, and those kind of uncover secrets in the house. And eventually, you know, no matter what, you kind of end up getting caught. And at the very end, it's a very iconic scare from Jack coming up from behind you and saying, "Welcome to the family, son."
Welcome to the family, son.
Which, this was a pretty good scare, I feel like, and the atmosphere is definitely built up. It was just kind of a mysterious house, and you didn't really know what you were doing. You're just kind of finding these things, and a lot of the items were kind of weird. And like, what kind of added to the atmosphere in a way was the fact that there was so much mystery in the real world. Like, if you tried looking up things about the demo, you'd just find that there's all these secrets with like the dummy finger and some of the notes, and people didn't really know at the time like what everything meant. There was also, if you looked closely in some of the recordings, I believe there was a ghost that could appear in certain spots. So there's all these just kind of random things that no one could figure out, and that just made the demo even creepier. So with all that, all the atmosphere building up, Jack had a very, very iconic jump scare that's definitely still around today. So I feel fine giving this number 10. It was definitely a bit of a phenomenon at the time. Number 9, I'm giving to Outlast, which was definitely a big horror title, to say the least. There was definitely a lot of atmosphere in this one, but definitely leaned on a lot of jump scares throughout the game. The one that stands out the most to me probably wasn't even the strongest jump scare in that game, but it was definitely the guy sitting in the wheelchair in the one hallway very early on in the game. And it's so obviously kind of set up, and actually the first time you walk by him, nothing happens. Like they definitely fake you out, and you're like, okay, whatever, this guy is comatose, out of his mind. All right, you know, you have this sense of safety. So then you go do something for a couple minutes in an adjacent room, come back out, you know, walk by him with your guard down, and man, that bastard jumps you right there. And I don't know, that one got me a little bit. I wasn't expecting it. I mean, looking back on it now, it's kind of obvious, but I am curious how many people that got, because I don't know, it was just, I don't know, that one just stands out to me. There were definitely many other moments in the game. There was also another one very early on when you go into the library of the building, and it is the loudest damn thing I've ever heard in a video game. That one doesn't really stand out more to me, because that's more of your typical jump scare. Just, you know, just pump the volume, just break the gauge. It's definitely Really startling, but that one I don't remember as fondly. I definitely like the wheelchair guy earlier on. We got number 8 here, and I feel like this is where my list is going to start differentiating itself from others, all right? So number 8, I'm going to give to Sweet Home, which is a NES game, all right? Yeah, okay, right. Let's let that sink in a little bit, that there was horror titles on the NES. So as you can imagine, building up a horror atmosphere with NES graphics is definitely going to be, I would say, a bit more of a challenge compared to having 3D graphics and things like that. But, you know, Sweet Home kind of gets away with some things. Just a little bit of brief history here. Sweet Home was made by Capcom in 1989, which places it quite a few years before Resident Evil came out, which was the big horror title. One of the biggest horror titles of all time, let's be honest. But this game kind of laid the foundation. It's often cited as the first survival horror game, or at least one of the first survival horror games. I know trying to debate history can get a little bit murky, but regardless, it was a very early title doing something like this. I would say that the atmosphere was laid on kind of thick at the beginning. I will say it kind of fell off. This game was an RPG, like survival horror game, so there's a lot of like turn-based combat and stuff, which was great. I had fun with that, but just, you know, like over the course of playing the game for several hours, it kind of falls off. But there's still like definitely a aura, mystery, and everything. But anyways, early on, you kind of don't know what you're getting yourself into. You're just exploring this mansion. You're figuring out all the controls, because the NES controller had A and B for buttons pretty much. So, but anyways, one of your goals is to just definitely examine your environment, collect items, solve puzzles, that sort of thing. And so naturally, you're kind of rolling up to every item you see and examining it. And there are certain things in the environment, such as dead bodies or sometimes dolls, and you'll examine them, and then the game will give you a jump scare, and then sometimes you'll end up talking to it. They'll talk to you or something. But this thing just leaps up on your screen, and it's accompanied by a very loud noise. All right, and that's got to be some of the first jump scares. I'm not a history expert, but I myself, from personal experience, I can't remember gaming jump scares before 1989. But it's really cool to see that like early DNA be present so early, and then that, you know, definitely became more and more of a bigger thing as time went on. Definitely catalyzed by certain titles. But regardless, this one is up here in the top 10 because it is very memorable to me. The game is very memorable. It's a really important piece of history. And it's just such a kind of unique scare. Just, I don't know, the fact that it exists on the NES. And, you know, it's pretty effective for what it is. Alright, let's talk about number 7. Fatal Frame. The original. This game, I will say, starting from the beginning, does a really good job of building atmosphere. And there are definitely jump scares throughout the game. But I'll say I wasn't too scared from a lot of the early on enemy types you encounter. But not too far into the game, there's this scene that I still remember, and that's why this game is up here. Where you're just walking down a balcony and all of a sudden a ghost just falls from the rooftops, all right, just hits the ground and then gets back up, and that's how you encounter this enemy type, which is, I think, literally called a broken neck. But it is the ghost is someone with a broken neck, and it's just kind of, I mean, by itself, its appearance is definitely disturbing, but just the fact that it was accompanied like by someone falling off the roof. That makes it hit just so much harder. And this was definitely one of the most memorable scares for me from the game. The rest of the game definitely has its scares, no doubt. The game gets really, really surprisingly dark at times, and that it does a great job with atmosphere throughout. I can definitely say that about the game, but the broken neck is definitely my favorite example from the game. Number 6 is going to Dread Out. This game wasn't the most popular game. It was made, on a smaller budget. It was made by a small studio in Indonesia. And as a result, the game definitely has a lot of aspects of Indonesian culture and lore and all that. And a lot of the enemy types are kind of based off of that. This game, honestly, overall in design is a lot similar to Fatal Frame. You're a female protagonist. You have a camera. That's the main way you interact with the enemies and progress the game and all that. You're usually in dark areas, although parts of this game take place like outside during the day, particularly early on. And the atmosphere is laid on thick, but I will say one way this game differentiates itself is I feel like overall the enemy design is done a little bit better. It's a bit darker overall. It's more consistent, I feel like, and there's always some background given with all the different enemy types you encounter. And there's also a lot of scares in this game, no doubt, and I feel like it definitely picks up towards the second half of the game. The one I will say that is probably my favorite that stood out the most was where you're kind of looking at yourself in a mirror. This is very late in the game. And you just see this woman in red that you've kind of seen throughout the whole game. In the reflection kind of coming up behind you, right? And that, that itself is already scary. But when you actually turn to look at her, in the real world, not in the reflection, you're greeted with a very scary face that is definitely uncomfortably close. And I will say that there were definitely plenty of other good scares throughout the game. I kind of want to give an honorable mention when you're locked in a closet sitting across from your friend. Who's like basically being possessed. That was also another good moment from that game. But definitely a underrated title. Again, I will say the first half of the game is pretty slow, but just the second half is definitely a great time.
Fine. Let me show you a trick.
All right, we're halfway through here. So, position number 5 is going to be given to the classic
Resident Evil.
And I will just say this is the last Resident Evil title on the list. I didn't want to flood this whole thing with Resident Evil scares, although there are definitely good ones throughout the series. But I am going to include specifically Resident Evil 1 here. Again, similar to a lot of the others in this list, I am a sucker for good atmosphere, and Resident Evil 1 definitely did that early on. I am not including the head turn jump scare that occurs really early in the game. That, for whatever reason, that didn't affect me as much, but I know that's an iconic scene. The one that I'm sure affected just as many people and stood out to me a lot is when you're walking down one of the hallways with a bunch of external windows, and as you're walking through there, all of a sudden you just hear the really loud sound of glass breaking, and the zombie dogs of that game jump through and attack you. It's a very scary moment, and in the remake, I believe, you actually walk through that hallway once, and then if you come back a second time, that's when they break through. I cannot remember if in the original game if they just do it from the get-go or if you have to walk through and then come back. But either way, this is just such a memorable jump scare from when I played this game when I was a lot younger. And it's just the build-up of you like looking at the glass. I think it's really windy and I think there's like shaking sounds. They did the ambience really well. And it's just, I don't know, it's something you expect definitely. But I think it's just the really loud sound accompanied by several dogs jumping through just really makes it work. And the fact that it's a survival horror game and you're usually low on resources and inventory and etc. Any like surprise enemy encounter is definitely not welcome in terms of your health and supplies. The rest of the game does a great job with atmosphere and there's a lot more scary moments. I do just want to give a mention to the really dark story and sad story of Lisa Trevor and the whole thing that transpires with that. Overall, like this game, very, very well done, and I'm secretly hoping for a remake. Alright, number 4 is a title I had so much fun with, and I have on the channel my playthrough of that. Number 4 is going to Alone in the Dark. This game was released in 1992. Alright, so this is about 3 years after Sweet Home, and this is often credited as the first 3D survival horror game. So this was released on MS-DOS. So the graphics are a little bit dated, not gonna lie, but they are 3D, and that does let them do a lot more things with it. This game is a ton of fun to play if you're into the whole survival horror scene, and I highly recommend it. Again, it's very similar to Sweet Home in that it's really cool just to explore where all these games kind of started, what the earlier titles looked like, and like seeing certain tropes like carrying on through the modern day. But anyways, the scariest moments for me were definitely earlier in the game when I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know what to expect from the game at all, trying to figure out the controls, how everything works, not knowing how much supplies you have, etc. And seemingly the game gives you like kind of this open space. You kind of start off up in the attic and, you know, you kind of figure out the controls, which are kind of weird. All right, like one unique thing about the game is that your like melee attacks are actually based off of your arrow keys. So depending on which arrow key you press, that's gonna do different attacks and all that. So there is a lot to work out, and it has its own menus and stuff for navigating inventory and all that. But if you spend enough time up here, and I don't think it's too long, I think it's a couple of minutes, all of a sudden the ambience changes. And you just get this music booming at you, and you know something bad is going to happen. And of course, very similar to the previous title in this list, you get some creature jumping through the window, breaking the glass, coming in, and coming right for you. And this is in the first just few minutes of the game. All right, there is no mercy given in this game. They don't care that you don't know the controls. They're sending this thing right in through the window after you. And still to this day, I don't know what this creature is. I don't know. But this is one of my most memorable moments in probably all of gaming. I probably fell in love with the game right there. You know, at that moment, I knew I had to finish it. But there are plenty other moments throughout the game. The atmosphere does carry through. There's a lot of puzzles and all that, and pretty dark overall story. And overall, this was such a wonderful game to play. Again, if you're into the survival horror scene and are okay with, you know, a little bit dated graphics, just a little bit, you can usually still make the stuff out. I highly recommend Alone in the Dark. All right, getting down to the nitty gritty. We're in the top 3 now. So position number 3, I'm given to PT, which maybe some people are upset it's not up higher, but hey, it is what it is. This is my own personal list. So PT was a really big deal. This was a demo that released in 2014, which is over 10 years ago already, which makes me feel really old. But it was kind of mysterious. I feel like it just kind of dropped out of nowhere. And it was this really, really well-crafted demo. Essentially, you just are, walking down the same hallway over and over again, and it just kind of gradually gets worse and worse as you kind of start experiencing the world around you corrupting and just getting scarier and scarier. It kind of starts off with just some subtle things, but then you have big changes, like lighting changes. You can have like a cage swinging back and forth from the ceiling, and eventually there are jump scares in this demo, with a ghost that kind of follows you around named Lisa. And there's not a whole lot of jump scares. There's definitely a few in PT, but it's definitely the atmosphere that I think most people would agree on that PT did a really good job of nailing. And I do really want to give PT kudos, but it was just a demo. And it had such a profound effect on gamers everywhere. It was such a big deal. And honestly, it was one of the best horror experiences that we had had for a long time. And the fact that it was just a demo was kind of impressive. So this was supposedly the teaser for an upcoming Silent Hill project, like a reboot of the series, which was even more exciting because we hadn't gotten a lot of good Silent Hill products in a long time. So there's a lot of excitement around it. But of course, that was when Konami and Hideo Kojima were having some fallout, and then they eventually split. And as a result of that, ultimately the project got dropped. So it's sad that we'll never see what's coming out of this, but on the bright side, we have the Silent Hill 2 remake from Bloober Team that just released that seems like a good product, so there's hope for the Silent Hill franchise in the future. I'm holding out. And there are rumors that Hideo Kojima is working on some horror games too. So, hey, I mean, I guess all is well that ends well, although I feel like this project would have been really cool to see it come to fruition. Number 2. I do regret that this isn't number 1. This is such a treasured title for me with many treasured moments. This is going to Silent Hill 1. I always have to go back and forth between Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 2 for my favorite horror games of all time. They both do certain things so well, and I dearly love them both. So I'm going with Silent Hill 1 here, since we're talking about scares, which are more, on the smaller scale end of things. I feel like Silent Hill 2 had less of those and had a different kind of horror about it. So that's why Silent Hill 1 is going in here. Now, Silent Hill 1 does an outstanding job with its atmosphere, with its scares, just pretty much everything all the way around. I really enjoy this game. So there are so many memorable moments from this game. I'm just going to give a few here that stand out the most. Probably my most memorable moment is right away at the beginning of the game. There's no wasting time with stupid intros or anything as dumb as that. All right, you just wake up in a car crash. All right, you open up your door, Harry sees his daughter running off in the distance. You got to go get her. And that's it. Shortly after, you're running down this like back alleyway. All right, the atmosphere is already there, but now it's getting worse and worse. The camera angles just start getting really, really weird, which was such a cool way to use fixed camera angles. Although the game isn't like entirely fixed camera angles, but they're definitely positioned. And it just starts warping and turning, and it gets all weird. And it's like such a simple, boring thing, but is so effective. So that on top of everything getting darker, things getting rustier, you find bloody carcasses and things like that. Eventually you get to the end, you get ambushed by these scary creatures, and then you end up dying. All right, this all happens within, let's just say, like 5 minutes of the game, maybe less, of just opening this thing up. That moment, that whole thing, that was so well executed, and one of my favorite moments. I do want to give some mentions to other ones. Another one, it's shortly after that scene. You're kind of feeling safe in the cafe, you talk with the NPC, and then she heads out, and then moments later, you get things crashing through windows, these giant bat things. It's kind of a theme with this list, huh? Things coming through windows. But it's so sudden, it just disrupts the mood that you feel kind of safe. And again, it's another moment that's so well done. Another moment I have to mention is the bloody locker scene. There's just this pounding noise happening as you walk into a room. It's, of course, a locker that's visibly just dripping with blood. And you go up to it, investigate it, very slowly open this thing up. And there's nothing inside. Everything's okay. Nothing bad here. The sound's gone. Everything's resolved. You let your guard down, of course. And then you take probably like 3 more steps. And this locker just bursts open with a dead body, really loud sound accompanying it. But it was just another really, really effective scare done by this game. There are many more moments throughout this game. The whole game is so well done. And again, it's one of my favorite horror games of all time.
Daddy, help me.
All right, number 1. Here we are. So I've mentioned Resident Evil, Silent Hill, PT, Outlast, all these titles that are, crazy high up in the horror food chain. So what game could possibly be number 1? The most memorable, scary moment for me in probably all of gaming is going to Zelda Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo 64. Alright, now I'm just going to preface this by saying maybe it's more effective to me because I'm younger, but still, going back to this today, this is such a scary moment. And there's more than one scary moment in this game. It's crazy. This game was so many things. So the moment I am specifically talking about is when you kind of roll out to the back of Kakariko Village. All right, and you're kind of wandering through this dark kind of graveyard area. It's pretty scary. You're playing a kid's game. You aren't thinking of horror and all this. You're not at all mentally prepared for all this. So, it's a little bit of atmosphere kind of building. And eventually, to progress through the game, you need to actually go down in some of these graves. All right, there's actually these areas you can explore to get certain items and things like that. So you drop down in one of them, a royal tomb. And the ambience in here, I just want to say, is so well done. Again, this is the Ocarina of Time, if I'm not mistaken, was rated E for everyone. All right. And, just picture me, I'm probably, 5 years old or so. Maybe even younger. Heck, I don't know. And you just have this ambience about you. I mean, you're in a graveyard, you're down in a grave site, and now you got this hitting you. You take a few steps forward, and there's just this room filled with just skeletons, right, all about the place. I think most of them are like animal skeletons, but there's one that's up against the side that's like basically a full human skeleton. All right, so they're definitely building you up. All right, and this is all coming together. You proceed a little bit forward into this just sealed off room through this really weird door, and you meet the moment. You walk into this weird ass room. I don't know, there's green pools in there, weird things like, I think it's a stream that's supposed to be coming down, filling the pool. I don't know. It all looks really weird. And you encounter the re-dead enemy type, which is this horribly scary looking thing. In contrast to everything else, even, I mean, that could stand alone in a Nintendo 64 horror game as an enemy type. Like, no problem. This thing, I don't know what's on it. I think it's supposed to be a mask, but like it just, I don't know. It looks like it's wearing someone else's face. It's so weird. And they just make these terrible groaning sounds. And if you try to like get close to them, fight them or anything, first of all, they have a ton of health. But second of all, they scream at you. And what is this horribly bone-chilling scream? And it actually paralyzes Link. You literally cannot move for a duration. And you just have to sit there and watch the thing creep towards you. And if it gets close enough, it literally jumps on you. And I don't even know what it does. And it sucks your life right out of you. I don't know if it's like biting your neck or something. All this combined, and I think there's 3 of them down there. They can all be screaming at you, paralyzing you. All right, and that's just, it's out of nowhere with this game. The tone is just radically different down there. You don't expect it. Ocarina of Time as a whole is not a horror game, but even with that, I think they pull off one of just like the scariest moments ever. With all that, I don't know. They're just flexing that, I don't know, the developers could do a horror game if they really wanted to. So again, I gotta give this #1 spot. It's the most memorable to me. It definitely had the most impact on me. Again, maybe a little bit influenced or biased because I was a lot younger at the time, but still, I still go back to this, and this is still, the atmosphere is there, the scares are there, the really weird creatures. I don't know, it's done so well, and that's all I can say. I mean, I'll fight anyone. I'll fight anyone. This is my #1. Alright, that's all I got for this list. I've definitely played a lot of horror games on this channel and otherwise. I mean, probably damn near most of them, to be honest. These are the ones that stand out in my memory. I'm sure there are some I missed. I could only fit 10 into here, and this is really, again, a personalized list. The ones that were most impactful and memorable to me. Alright, there were some other games that were great, and I just feel like I couldn't quite fit into this list, so I guess this will be my honorable mentions if I had a proper section for that. Some games that stand out are Eternal Darkness on the GameCube. They had a really cool sanity mechanic with that game. Haunting Ground on the PS2 was so good in that you had people following you, particularly early in the game. I think the first guy that follows you is my favorite. And just really, really weird encounters you have with these people. They're just perpetually stalking you throughout the game. Other games I want to mention, there were some popular ones back in the day that had, memorable jump scares. There was, Slender Man was a big one for a lot of people. I had never played the game. It wasn't super impactful, to me overall. I wasn't so involved in that. Kind of a similar thing with Five Nights at Freddy's. I haven't really played the games at all. I played some of the VR, like a little bit. But again, yeah, I didn't include some of these in my list because I hadn't played them. And I also just want to give a mention to Amnesia: The Dark Descent, which was an incredibly scary game, one of my favorites. I had so much trouble trying to slot this into the list, I just left it out, which maybe wasn't the best call, but I just want to say I did that because the whole damn game is a scary experience, and I couldn't pull out like one moment. It's just kind of the whole experience of everything going to hell gradually. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up here. One thing I just want to say, just from recording this whole video here, it seems that, you know, creating moments where you let your guard down, or maybe you already have your guard down in the case of Ocarina of Time, not expecting it, that seems to be the way to make the most memorable scares. All right. And definitely atmosphere being a really important component as well. So just the trends that I kind of noticed while I'm putting this thing together here. Just want to mention it. Again, I'm sure I missed a lot of things. You know, feel free, we can have a discussion down in the comments. I would love that. Again, I'm not trying to create a objective list here. All right, this is a very just subjective list of the 10 that definitely stood out to me. So genuinely, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope I brought up some titles that maybe aren't brought up so much, because these ones do deserve a little bit of attention. I think had some pretty great moments. So hopefully this wasn't just a replication of a bunch of other scare videos on YouTube. And with that, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.